All right, let's get our Facebook groups in here before it's officially time to start the show. Got our spinning wheels going. 1 and 2. All right, welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. It is the 30th of October, and it's time for an episode of Broncos for Breakfast. I am Nick Kendell, and joined by, as always, Scott Kennedy. But for the first time, Scott, following a victory versus the hated rival Kansas City Chiefs. Long time coming, Scott. How you doing? Glad that we can be over here celebrating today.
I am thrilled for Broncos country. I really am. We talk about all the time about fanning, and I'm not nearly as big a fan of any teams in the NFL. I've been doing this for so long in sports media, but I'm a fan of the relationships you build, and I'm thrilled for Broncos country. I saw how happy everybody was in the chat last night, and I'm sure that's carried over to Monday. And look forward to talking some Broncos with y'all.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got Addison coming in off the bat before the show even starts, dropping a $9.99 super. Thank you so much, Addison. He says, "Morning, guys. I was at the game and was regretting going because of the weather, but it was totally worth freezing my butt off. I'm not sure what to think of the team. Still, we're kind of in a weird spot. Well, what you can think of the team right now is that when things go well for them, they have the ability to defeat the Kansas City Chiefs, and not only defeat the Kansas City Chiefs, but thoroughly outplay them in all three phases of the game. The Broncos defense did better than the Chiefs defense. The Broncos offense did better than the Chiefs offense. The Broncos special teams did better than the Chiefs special teams. So a three-phase out and out total victory that I think the Broncos actually could have beaten the Chiefs by, honestly, probably by more. And we'll get into a lot of the reasons as to why the game played out the way it did. But yeah, definitely worth getting to the game, and you never know, right? Scott, I mean, we shouldn't pretend. I'm not going to pretend that I predict the Broncos to win this game by any means, but we said many times, people in the chat, is there any chance Denver could win? Absolutely, there's a chance, and we saw that on Sunday.
No, and we actually got called out for, what are you guys smoking? Have you even watched the games? Why do you think this could possibly happen? We reeled off a couple of the upsets from the week before. This is why. Do we think it's going to happen? No. Why? And I've said, I don't care what the teams look like until the Denver Broncos beat the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm going to pick the Kansas City Chiefs. But, you wouldn't go into this game thinking that the Denver Broncos were going to win this game. You'd have hope they were going to win this game. And you knew that they could if they played well and things went right. What's astounding is that to lose that many games in a row is beyond statistical belief. Because you're going to have a game where a guy's fumbling the ball on the 5. There's going to be a game where, somebody drops a wide open pass. That happens, and you lose those games in the NFL, Nick. So it's crazy that hasn't happened before this. But every team is capable of having a game like this. And it's as someone else is saying in here in the chat, the Broncos outcoached on both sides of the ball. I mean, just watch the defensive side. Vance Joseph was calling plays that were sniffing out the little screens, sniffing out the little shuffle passes, bringing pressure. It was a total team victory.
Yeah, I mean, I have very few criticisms of how they played or what the calls or anything on this one. So shout out to the coaching staff. Shout out to everybody. Shout out Broncos country. 16 games in a row. Nobody beats our team 17 times in a row. So I TikTok of that.
So you're one day closer to ending the streak. Well, now you're one day closer to starting a new one.
I mean, we are streaking 2 in a row, 2 victories in a row for Denver.
Chiefs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's don't call it a streak just yet, but we got Wang Chung's coming in saying, it was me. I sneezed on Mahomes. Let's go. Yeah, Mahomes playing flu game. I don't give a hoot if they make excuses for it. He was out there, not injured, and the Broncos beat him, so it counts. And Patrick Mahomes' first road divisional loss in his career. So just nice to start a lot of streaks here this week and end some other ones. Troy Bauer coming in here. Boo her. Gonna get it. Troy Booher coming in, $9.99. Good to see you, Troy. Says, hey, guys. Seems like the PJ Locke substitute for Kareem Jackson was a blessing for deep coverage. Interested to see what moves we made and can't wait to see Sean Payton can game plan after the bye week. Have a great show. Thank you so much, Troy. And yeah, I think we can't start on this game without talking about the defense. The Broncos hold the Chiefs to 9 points in this game. It's the third time in Patrick Mahomes' career a team that he's quarterbacking in the NFL does not score a touchdown. And overall, the Broncos just had a phenomenal game. I mean, we'll go through some of the stats. Mahomes, 24 for 38, only 241 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, QBR 42.6, sacked 3 times as well. Isaiah Pacheco, the Chiefs' leading rusher, only 8 carries for 40 yards. Travis Kelce, 9 targets, but 6 receptions for 58 yards. I mean, I'm having a hard time coming away with anything on this game from the defensive side that's like, yeah, we could have done better here. Just an outright well-executed game, and good job by Vance Joseph's boys on the defense.
To get to Troy's point, and thank you, Troy, the coverage on the backside is phenomenal. I mean, you can talk about, to their credit, I mean, Patrick Mahomes didn't talk. He was asked a question. No, I wasn't feeling that great. But then he got right into, they've played well against us 2 games in a row where we didn't execute well enough. I mean, he put it on them. We didn't do this enough. We didn't do this enough. But that the Denver Broncos basically shut us down 2 games in a row. They've done well against us. He had time. He had plays that be made. Sometimes they weren't made on the other side, but there wasn't one where he said, oh, yeah, if Patrick Mahomes was feeling better, he would have made this play. No, he can't catch the ball too, right? Sky Moore. But it was impressive to me was the coverage on the backside where he would escape and get those chances to go second and third choices as he gets out of the pocket. Nothing. He was not able to make that big play except maybe between the boxes, somewhere in between the 20s, where it was just kind of empty yardage. It wasn't a backbreaker, a third down conversion into scoring territory. So the Denver Broncos completely corralled this Kansas City Chiefs offense, and really they've done it twice now.
And I just want to get a little bit more into what that looked like and things that I think are worth pointing out from this game. How many explosives did the Chiefs have in this game? Maybe 1 or 2. There was a few plays in the first half where Mahomes escaped and then hits, a guy that's open after, creating 10 seconds of separation. Mahomes had some of those still high-level plays, but they didn't end up leading to scores or touchdowns. The Broncos continuously in this game, and I know it's been a dirty word in here. I've been a little bit at odds, I guess, with Broncos country with this, but not really overly blitzing Patrick Mahomes in this one, playing much more of a contain, loop around guys, and playing very conservative off coverage on the back end, all eyes forward, coming down and making the tackles. I know that the bend don't break. Again, people want aggressive defense. They want guys coming and hitting, but making this Chiefs team who lack playmakers, let's just call it as it is, lack playmakers at the skill position, have to create after the catch downhill. They couldn't do it. I mean, Fabian Moreau, Jaleel McLaughlin, the safeties, the linebackers, everybody coming downhill, playing really smart integrity, gap sound football in their lanes and tackling in the open field. When that happens, the Chiefs, when they do get it down, you continue to play that really exceptionally disciplined football. They're kicking field goals instead of touchdowns. So an unbelievable game from the defense. Is there anybody else we want to highlight here? I mean, it's just really, I think Vance Joseph, man, take a bow. This was an incredible game for him. He's had 3 games in a row now where the Broncos defense has been playing top 10 level, dare I say. And they've really had turnaround this season.
One I want to call out because you messed his name up and he deserves better.
Oh,
Jaleel McMillian.
McMillan, excuse me. Yes.
You called him McLaughlin, which is understandable.
Yes.
He played the first half. He played as well as you can play the game. In both phases, in run protection, or at least short passing protection, tackling, and pass coverage was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal, as well as you can play the game. There's like 3 plays in a row where he has an interception, then he blows up a guy on it was a screen pass or a short, but it was at the line of scrimmage. I was like, man, have a game, kid. There are several guys. I mean, you really could go on and on and on about who played really well. I'll say Fabian Moreau again. It's a different guy. The guy I poo-pooed at the beginning of the season, this is a different guy than the one I watched for a full season in Atlanta. He's playing like his job is on the line. And he was one of 5 guys to play all 61 snaps in a game where you didn't let the Kansas City Chiefs score a touchdown. Good job. For me, I think most improved from beginning of the season to now is Zach Allen. I think he is a difference maker on the defensive line right now. DJ Jones is good. Love DJ Jones. Zach Allen is disrupting things up front in a 3-man 3-man line, he is disrupting things. Baron Browning has come in. He's made a difference. Zach Allen from beginning, where we saw him in week 1, 2, 3 to where he is now, his graph is heading the right direction.
And Scott, you mentioned that you texted me this yesterday. I actually did want to make a point on this Zach Allen thing. I feel like he's had a lot more one-on-one opportunities, just scheme-wise, from the Broncos defensive front. And I think that's obviously a credit more to Vance Joseph understanding things, but also personnel. Something I've noticed from the first 3 weeks to the last 2.5 weeks. We've seen number 92, Jonathan Harris's snaps. And I need the data to back this up, but I chart the defensive line pretty well. Jonathan Harris's snaps have plummeted a good bit, and I think Mike Purcell's have gone up. And because of that, along with DJ Jones, I think you're getting a lot more freed up for Zach Allen out there to take advantage of. So did want to give a shout out to the defensive front, the defensive line as well. You're right. Zach Allen has been making plays. Baron Browning, Nick Bonito, Jonathan Cooper, the tenacity that they played with in this game to continue to hunt. Mahomes is going to bide time, but you need to continue to get after the quarterback, and they made some plays on that overall. But yeah, Zach Allen has been playing really good football the last 3-4 weeks, and excited to see him continue to develop. Only 24, 25 years old. The best is yet to come for him. So it looks like the Broncos got I wouldn't say like a true, alpha difference maker there, but a solid contributor to a defensive line where you need waves of dudes.
Well, and he's not getting rotated nearly as much. So the fact that he's in there, so you mentioned the plays. Jonathan Harris had 24 snaps. Mike Purcell was only in on 10, but by God, I would have said more than that, because when he was in there, I saw him. He was doing some stuff. DJ Jones only had 29 snaps. Meanwhile, Zach Allen had 49. He played 80% of the defensive snaps. So the announcers yesterday at the end were like saying Zach Allen coming out, he's exhausted. I'm like, well, I bet he is. He's becoming the guy you paid for, which bodes well for this team. We said at the beginning, the guys that are the highest contracts, you look up there and they're all underperforming. All of them. Your guys that are expensive are underperforming. They're starting to catch up with that. Cortland Sutton looks like an $18 million wide receiver out there. Zach Allen looks like an 8-figure defensive lineman. DJ Jones, he's never really underperformed. He's pretty damn steady, but he's really good. And when Zach Allen is doing more, guess who else is being more effective? It works right on down the line, Nick.
Yep. Yeah, everybody played pretty darn well in this one. You continue to want to give the defense their flowers. We got more supers coming in here. Jacob Hutton coming in here saying if Mahomes can win a Super Bowl on one leg, he should be able to score a touchdown against a defense that let up 70 points. Yeah, unfortunately, because of the Broncos' absolutely horrific start to the season, their efficiency numbers are still dead last in the NFL, which, that's going to happen when you give up 70 points in a game. But over the last, since that game, they've been a better defense. Just the last 3 weeks, I think they've been a top 10 defense when you look at it like that. So small sample size, the 70-point one still counts, but it's normalizing.
Listen, we'll do the same thing we did for last year's defense. Last year was like, well, this was a top 5 unit. No, it really wasn't. The last 8 games were blah, blah, blah. We're like 25th the last 8 games. That's not a small sample size. That's half a season. After you trade Bradley Chubb, that's half the year. We'll do the same thing for this group. We'll start week 5 and say, okay, the last 12 games, this was an X unit. Let's throw this out. New scheme, new system. Some new players. Honestly, there were some new personnel, some injuries in there. How did they play? And that's how we'll talk about judging this team. It's like, oh, well, they still finished 28th. But after this horrible start, they were X. And if they're sitting there at 9 or 10, we're going to say this was a damn good defense, no matter what the whole of the season says. Because right now, they're playing at a level that makes them a damn good defense.
Yeah.
And we've seen it 3-4 weeks in a row now.
Yeah, I think they're trending towards being a league average defense overall, and everything's starting to click for them as far as scheme and understanding. So, I mean, Scott, are we at a point now where is it more likely Vance Joseph's back than gone? I mean, it's people, screaming for him to be fired. Every single comment, and not every single one, but half the one in here where, firing Vance Joseph, blah, blah, blah. Broncos have been patient with him. I think right now it's more likely he's back than gone. I mean, we still have games to be played, just like I said before, that we're not firing him yet. We still have games to be played that we're going to find out about, but they're playing good football. And it seems like they've really not only obviously the field, the on the field product, but it seems like they've rallied around him as well. It feels like there's a lot of internal support for Vance Joseph.
What would it take for him to get a head coaching job next year?
Denver goes on a historic run and they continue to play defense at a top 5 level. I don't think that's very possible given his previous head coaching experience.
Right.
That typically is like you got to doubly prove it then when that happens. But I mean, anything can happen, I guess.
But we're talking, and the thing is, the yards against the Chiefs was 389 2 weeks ago. So I'm looking at the last, 331 against the Packers, but only gave up 17 points, and then 9 points. Again, we're getting over our skis a little bit, but right now I would say yes, you're absolutely trending to where you want Vance Joseph to continue the work that he's doing because things are heading in the right direction. Yes.
Yep.
And frankly, you got to give Sean Payton some credit for not knee jerking on this. You have to. It took some balls to not fire Vance Joseph after 3-4 weeks into the season. It really did.
And I got to think a lot of the defensive coaches can appreciate that as well, because we mentioned on here, why not fire Vance Joseph? Well, the job for every single defensive coach, A, you're kind of on your, oh my gosh, I'm one slip away from being fired. And B, the jobs for all those guys would have gotten exponentially harder. I mean, the roles being changed mid-season, the responsibilities shifting, that's typically a sign of things going from bad to worse. So credit to all of them. We haven't even talked about the offense yet. We'll get to it soon, but we got some super chats piling up. Mark McDonald coming in 1999. He also had our first comment today saying, Broncos country, let's ride. Good to see you. We're definitely riding today, riding the offensive line and the defense all the way to a victory for sure. We got Elliot D coming in saying, good morning. Got to give Vance Joseph's props. He had the team ready. That said, do we have different trade deadline plan? I think that the Broncos trade deadline plan, Scott, don't change. You're still a 3-5 team. I think the groundwork that you made is still very much in use. Maybe if anything, that keeps you to hold fast with your offer. Like maybe if you lose this game and it's like, we really wanted a 3 for Judy. Okay, I guess we'll accept the 4. That kind of thing. Maybe you give up a little bit of value in that. Now you're saying, no, we still have this guy for control for another year. If you don't meet our value, God bless you. We'll keep him.
And that's the key, Elliot D in Broncos country, is the guys that you were talking about trading are not walking at the end of this season. If it's, maybe Josie Jewell, but everybody that for the most part we've talked about that has any kind of trade value at all is still under contract. We talk about them having trade value because you have flexibility in their contract, meaning Justin Simmons has $12 million in cap savings next year. So that means you can trade him without any detrimental effects to your cap, but they're still under control. So unless these guys are actively harming your team, Randy Gregory, maybe Frank Clark, the addition by subtraction guys are already out of here. So if you don't get an offer that makes it worth it, you're better off having these guys on your team until maybe you trade them in the offseason, which you still have an option for. The only one that falls into that category, Nick, would be Josie Jewell, is the one that is a free agent at the end of this year. Of all the guys we have talked about, Josie Jewell is the only one that is a free agent.
Yep. So he'll be interesting to follow. I still am expecting 1 to 2 trades occur. But that's that'll be interesting to follow.
Anything of significance, though? I mean, like Jerry Jeudy would be significant. Anything of a starter player in there?
I think there's a chance for a linebacker, and I think there's a chance for a wide receiver. And I think it's possible that they could both be starters. But that said, one of the reasons you're doing that, A, because you're 3-5, and you, sorry to use the word that you don't like, Scott, but they don't really have a lot of capital this offseason.
You can call them picks.
They don't have a lot of draft picks. It's also creating the cap space that can roll over. So it's a 2-for-1. That's why I use capital. But you can create picks and cap space from that. And also you have guys waiting in the wings. It's not like you're just like going there, and obviously, knock on wood, injuries can happen at any time, but like Marvin Mims is there. Okay, with second half of the season, we need to evaluate what he has. If we have a good offer on the table that can create that opportunity for him a little bit more so, while adding picks and cap space, that's possible. Linebacker, we want to see what Drew Sanders has out there, even though probably a step back from competing. We're 3-5. We have a chance to create more flexibility going forward and evaluate the guy that we just took with the top 70 pick. So those are the ones that stand out to me.
Right. So, but it's not a fire sale. It's not, I'm giving these guys away. I'm not going to take a 6th-round pick for Cortland Sutton just so I can have the 6th-round pick and the cap space for next year. Yep. That's not going to happen anymore. No. Like I said, that's an addition by subtraction type of move. And those moves have already been made with Frank Clark and Randy Gregory. And frankly, how much better has this team played since those moves have been made?
A lot better. I also want to toss out, this is not a personality thing, but it is a play thing. We always, for some reason, this guy doesn't get mentioned, but it's saying Bassey going the door as well and putting in Jaquan McMillan, get the name right. Fabian Monroe. I mean, just the tackling has gotten so much better from the back end there, the run fits. So
if you would have told me that you got more physical on defense by putting Fabian Moreau on the field for 100% of your defensive plays, I would have said you were out of your freaking mind.
I think the big one there would be Bassey being off because he is not a physical player.
But I'm not even going to say that's the big one. I'm saying that Fabian Moreau, I'm not damning with faint praise. He's been good.
Yeah.
You know, this doesn't have anything to do with Bassey. This has to do with, you know, there was nowhere to go but up because Bassey was. No, forget that. Fabian Moreau has been good.
Good.
End of.
Period. Yeah.
Shocking to me. And when I say, like, we can't admit you're wrong, yeah, I can. And I love being wrong about these guys. Yeah. I absolutely want, I don't root against these players. I want them to succeed.
Yeah.
He's playing at a completely different level than what I've seen in the past. Good for him. Good for you.
Yeah, and just a quick shout out to Broncos defensive back coach here, Christian Parker. You know, questions early, Bassey. You know, the depth of the safety room with the injuries and whatnot. You have issues with Mathis to start the season. Well, little switch up of the guys playing out there, and you got Moreau, McMillan playing best defense of their career. PJ Locke looks ready, and maybe even a positive in terms. I mean, he had some big hits out there. I'm not calling him Kareem Jackson, but he had, you know, number 6 out there wearing the orange long sleeves too, I believe. Had some big hits. So I did want to give a shout out to Christian Parker. There's a reason that he is considered one of the best up and coming coaches, and he's got that secondary playing good ball. Michael Ronquillo.
Go ahead. I want to let me grab this real quick. Michael Ronquillo has been waiting patiently. Thank you, Michael Ronquillo. He says, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos. Appreciate you, Michael, coming in last night, today, every day. Love you, man. Jeremy says, speaking of linebackers, Drew Sanders got totally robbed of a touchdown on his punt fumble recovery. He wasn't touched and he scored. You're not allowed to advance the muff punt. That's the rule. So it wasn't about being touched or not. You can recover. You can't advance. That's why nobody chased him. As soon as you pick it up, it's a dead ball. I don't know why. I have no idea why, but that's the rule. I can block the punt and return it. I can basically pick up a live ball any other time in football, except that one. A muff punt, dead ball.
Dead ball.
Don't know why.
Yeah, I knew it's a dead ball too, but I couldn't tell you why.
I have no idea why. That's the only time that happens.
Maybe because the odds, I mean, but for a block punt, the odds are also incredibly high.
You think it's like a safety concern or something, but that doesn't, I don't know why. I can catch an onside kick on the fly. No, that's another time I can't do it. I don't think. I don't think you're allowed to grab an onside kick and go. So maybe it's just the kicking game. So I don't think I can pick up a kickoff and return it either. The other team can. You've seen that happen where they bounce up and a guy comes flying up and takes it the other direction. But I've never seen, so I think it's the kicking game in general. The kicking team cannot advance the ball. On an onside kick, you can just recover it and retain possession. But I know for a fact on a punt return, a muff punt, there's no advancing.
Yeah. I don't know. It's weird, but good to see the Broncos take advantage of another team's special teams blunders. It feels like they've been on the wrong end of that for a long time. And we need to get to the
Montreal Washington. It was the guy brought in to replace Montreal Washington because they've had trouble in the kicking game.
Yeah, Mecole Hardman. Yep.
Mecole Hardman. But it was Washington that they brought in. They activated him. He was active for a little bit, and they
replaced.
Didn't like that experiment.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So more super chats coming in here. Sorry, guys, we haven't been able to get to all the other non-super chat ones, but we got to prioritize the super chat ones when they do come in, and we got a lot to talk about. We haven't even talked about the offense yet. Gary Palmer, 1999, good to see you. He says, good morning, Nick and Scott. What a win. Nobody expected this. Maybe Sean Payton knows what he's doing. Go Broncos. I hate to be that guy, Scott. The Broncos are definitely trending in a good direction, and the scheme, everything looked good. It is a one-game sample size, and there was a lot of fluky things in this game that went the Broncos' way. Stuff that, the muff punt, is that replicable? Excuse me, I work in math. I do a math job. But
not so good on the English.
Yeah,
My
God.
math was way ahead of my verbal on my SATs.
Zeros and ones don't lie. And then also you got the Broncos, the discrepancy in the red zone offense in this one. The Chiefs not able to score. The Broncos going, what, 3 for 3, 3 for 4 in the
But
red
that's 2
zone?
games in a row that they've held them out in the red zone.
The Broncos got held out in the last one too, though. Is what I'm saying. Like, it just everything flipped and really did go the Broncos' way in this one, which is, to your point earlier, how the Broncos haven't won one.
How does that not happen in 7 years?
Yeah, exactly. Like, sometimes it just happens, and this is one of the ball that went the Broncos' way, and this is the result now. Not that the Broncos were lucky in this one, but the level of dominance, some of it was, just flukiness that happens in a football game. That's why you play the game. But thank you so much, Gary. We appreciate you. And not to take away from the Broncos. It feels like almost all these games have gone against them for years now, and it's nice to have one where it's finally like, okay, they muffed it. We score immediately on a touchdown.
What did we say last week, Nick? That the problem right now that you've had as Broncos country is you keep waiting for that check mark to start heading up. We look at a line graph. These are your feelings. This is how you feel. These are the results. You bottomed out on Christmas Day last year against the Rams, or I think it was Christmas Day because it's like the Christmas.
Yeah, it was.
It didn't. You got a blip in the offseason, and you're like, oh, we got Sean Payton. We made some really good signings, and then the season starts, and you're right back down on the bottom. You can argue that 70 points to Miami was even worse. I'm going to say it's still on the bottom, still on the bottom. When's it going to get better? It got better against the Packers. That was the first dink. If we turn it into an EKG, there's signs of life. This is a team that had lost 10 in a row when they've had the lead. They lost the lead in the fourth quarter and came back and won it. Learning how to win the game. The turning point for this team was last week against the Packers. They backed it up against the Chiefs. Now, are you skyrocketing up all of a sudden? This is a Super Bowl contender? No, but for the Broncos fans and Broncos country, I see the arrow headed in the right direction for the first time in how long, Nick?
Since Peyton Manning was here.
Years.
Years.
And that's a good feeling. Enjoy it.
Yeah. I need to see it happen again multiple times. I agree.
Enjoy the win. This team is better. We've said this team has improved, even if the results don't show it. We've seen signs that this team is a better team.
Yeah,
it is.
I agree with you 100%. I guess I'm kind of taking the page from Sean Payton here in the post-game press conference where it's like, this game wasn't any bigger. We're going to play bigger games going forward, and hopefully we're building something here. I don't think Sean Payton, is thinking anything besides this one's behind us now. How do we build on that? And how do we stack more games in a row where we're playing physical football like we saw against the Chiefs this week? And we'll get to the offense here in a second, but man, the Broncos, both sides of the line of scrimmage, felt like they won this one emphatically. And it's been a long time, Broncos country, since we've been able to say that, specifically on the Broncos offensive side of the ball. But first, more defense. Diego Alonso coming in, $4.99 super chat saying, edge rusher Baron Browning is looking great for it being his second game back. Yeah, Browning had a very, very good game. A few good pass rush moves here and there, but really it was the relentless nature of all of those edge rushers. Going to throw in Nick Benito and Jonathan Cooper as well. That those guys, Mahomes buying time, escaping the pocket, and you have these crazy long rush arcs, and they continue to hunt and get after him and put pressure on him while also still playing pretty good discipline in terms of their rush. I feel like they didn't cheat too much on that, keeping Mahomes still within the structure of the pocket. So really good game for those edge rushers. And yeah, Baron Browning looks like a very good player as long as he can stay healthy. I mean, that is the big one with Browning.
That was a really good rotation. Jonathan Cooper with 37 snaps, Baron Browning with 36, Nick Benito with 32. And I thought I saw Brandon Perkins actually out there doing a few things. We had 25 snaps. Ronnie Perkins. I'm sorry. Brandon Perkins.
He plays almost as much coverage as he does pass rush snaps.
But Ronnie
He's like a hybrid.
Out there. Yeah. And we talked about having the depth out there. You can play relentless. Your legs are fresher when it matters. Even if you're not quite as good as this guy, if in the fourth quarter I've only played half the snaps, I'm going to be that much fresher and that much stronger in the second half. So the rotation is definitely beneficial. Andrew Lampy says, morning, I slept really good for some reason. Good for you, Andrew. Like I said, I'm thrilled for Broncos country. I really am. David Cromwell coming with a super chat. Was yesterday a fluke, or do you think it was regarded as a foundational game in the years ahead? I said it a moment ago, David. The turning point for me, because again, we're on the line graph is headed up now. Started last week against the Packers. Started in a game that you could have blown. Started in a game where you lost the lead. Started in a game where you came back and won after you lost the lead, believing that you can win. That's where it started. This was a continuation on that. So when you look back and you say, Scott, when did it all turn around? Packers. That was the game. This was a continuation of that. Now, does that mean, hey, you've won 2 in a row, you're going to go win 10 in a row? The pump the brakes moment for me, Nick, is this team is still behind the 8 ball on trying to make the playoffs because of the slow start they got on. You beat the Chiefs, you can go on the road and beat the Bills. If you go on the road and beat the Bills, I'll start talking about this being a playoff team. If you do that, you win 3 in a row, including wins against the Chiefs and the Bills. Until then, I'm going to keep talking about improvements, hope, direction, but not playoffs. You dug yourself too big a hole at the beginning of the season, Nick. To go on the road and beat the Bills is going to be a tall order. The bye week helps. I think it does. But it's going to be a tall order. And I will still be excited for Broncos country for the direction of this team because it's been flatlined for so long.
Yeah.
But you dug yourself a hole. I'm not ready to start talking playoffs until after the Bills game.
Yeah, and a foundational game for years to come. I mean, maybe it can be a foundation. There's teams rotate so much and turnover. There's so much turnover that it's hard for me to say it could be foundational for years to come. But getting that monkey off the back that is Kansas City's got to feel good for a bunch of those guys in the locker room. You know, vanquishing the boogeyman, so to speak, Halloween weekend is great for them. And also, as far as becoming foundational, this looks like a team that might be able to rock fight their way in most games to competent offense. I mean, the rushing game and the offensive line specifically in this one took it to the Chiefs, who before this week had been having one of the better statistical seasons in the NFL, one of the better defenses, a lot of depth on that front seven. Didn't matter in this game, though. I mean, the Broncos, just the efficiency from the rushing game, 40 rushing attempts for 153 yards, 3.8 yards per carry. But some of that efficiency dropped off dramatically at the end of the game when, you had some negative runs there when the Chiefs were sending, all out run blitzes to close the game. But I mean, Javonte Williams, 27 carries for 85 yards, 15 long. You had Jaleel McLaughlin with 4 for 33. Maybe start to see him get a little bit more usage there as well. But overall, the offensive line in the run game, I thought, had one of their better games. I can't even think of a negative to speak of in the Broncos run game in the offensive line. I mean, we had, 5 sacks in this one against Russell Wilson, 6 sacks for 27 yards. But when you're running the ball as efficiently as the Broncos were, I can live with that, even though that's a bad number on the surface.
Yeah. The turnovers and stuff, again, that's stuff that's got to be cleaned up. But overall, the way you're it's a dangerous game to play, when you trust the defense against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
But it paid off. It was one of those, this is our day. We're taking the ball away. They're making mistakes. Let's not get crazy. But that said, Russell Wilson still took his shots down the field, was still aggressive, and that opens up the running game. Even if you don't hit Jerry Jeudy on that long pass up the left seam, that backs them off. That opens up the running game more. And when you do hit one of those, if you do hit one to Sutton, it opens up the running game so much. And Russ still has plenty of arm. Absolutely plenty of arm. We talk about wash this or wash that. I'm looking at the release and arm strength. Is he as quick? Maybe not. But he can still sling it, Nick. He can still sling it.
Yeah. I mean, the ball pops out of his arm. It's more of the efficiency getting through the reads and sometimes the athleticism to create. But, I mean, that one touchdown to Sutton where he climbed the pocket, got through the parting of the defensive line, something that we were screaming for last week. Like, he's short, I get that. But, like, when edge rusher goes this way and defensive tackle goes this way and you got a gap there, like, step up. And we saw that this week on that beautiful Sutton touchdown that really felt like the nail in the coffin.
And what a ball to Jeudy on that touchdown.
That one too. Did Jeudy catch it? Did you?
He was in.
Okay, because they looked at it again, and I don't know how much you watched the replay on it, but he bobbled it, and then that last foot, I could not tell.
I watched the replay, and then I watched the replay of the replay, and it looked like he got 4 feet into me.
Okay, I saw him bobble the ball on the second one, so it was a question if it was that last one. Either way, they didn't say the call
Pat.
stands. They didn't say call confirmed. Stands. So touchdown, Jerry Judy, Sutton touchdown. We're celebrating in Mile High and talking about the guys as well. Jeff Cornelson coming in here saying over on Facebook, good to see you. Jeff says, good game. Do we go after a tight end? Is there any tight end out there going after? If this is a question for the immediacy, the answer is probably no. Your tight end that you're going after is Dulcich, hopefully getting healthy and contributing. I thought Troutman had a really good game, specifically in the blocking department. This is a pretty poor tight end draft class coming up here this season. After Brock Bowers, it's a bunch of shrugged shoulders at that spot. So we'll see. Theo Johnson out of Penn State's interesting. Caden Stover out of Ohio State's interesting. You got a guy from Texas. Maybe that also can be helpful. North Carolina has a solid pass catcher. But those are the guys that I keep an eye on if this is a draft question. As far as the immediacy goes, you're preying on Dulcich.
The problem, the Broncos had a good offseason in free agency, but the problem is when you're not a playoff team, you have to overspend to get those guys to come in. You pay a little bit more than everybody else. And you look at the tight end, I'm like, okay, well, they signed Manhurts, they signed Troutman, and you know what? They needed signing bonuses to do it. Those guys are still on the books for next year with dead cap numbers, which surprised me a little bit because normally those are 1 year type of guys that you bring in. But Manhurts has a 3.5 dead cap next year. Troutman has a 1.5 dead cap next year. Now you can eat that, but you combine those two, and 5 million dead cap that's significant. That's a decent amount of money
for the tight ends
when you're not getting anything back on those guys. So would both of those guys be back? We'll see. And my initial reaction to that question from Jeff is, yes, you've got to go get a tight end. You have to. There has to be a tight end that's better in the passing game, and you can't count on Greg Dulcich right now, Nick. You're not going to cut him because he's still cheap and he's talented.
Yeah.
But, man, it's hurting you that he's not available.
It's certainly possible. I mean, at some point, Scott, you have to give a chance to the guys you have on the roster, because we were talking, I feel like an episode last week, we talked about that. You have to go out there and pay a safety. You have to go out there and pay a defensive lineman. You have to go out there and pay a tight end. You can try, obviously, but some of these guys that are already here, somebody needs to step up and make a play. We saw it from PJ Locke this week. Hopefully you'll see it from Dulcich too. One thing that the Broncos have done to counteract issues at the tight end position in terms of talent and depth is that they've been playing more 6 offensive line looks. I mean, Quinn Bailey came out in this game I don't know if he had more snaps in this game than in the Packers game, but saw Quinn Bailey out there a lot on top of having Manhurts and Troutman and Atkins out there. I mean, this is a heavy personnel team forcing teams into defensive base. So adding another tight end would be great to this team, but right now they are finding ways around it there's definitely limitations in the pass game because of that. But if they continue to punch teams in the mouth the way they did with the run game in this one, you're going to have a chance in almost every game, even with Russell Wilson not playing great football.
Quinn Bailey had 11 snaps. Adam Troutman had more snaps than anyone that was not an offensive lineman or quarterback.
I believe that.
So basically, he had the most snaps of any skill position player for the Denver Broncos was Adam Troutman. Is that a guy worthy of he's on the field as part? If you've got 6 guys, 5 offensive linemen and a quarterback, he's basically the 7th. He's on the field with those guys the whole game. Is he good enough for that? Is that what you want?
It'd be good to upgrade. I can see them going with him just being serviceable next year. And this is one reason I was banging the drum for a true inline tight end all offseason, Scott. And I was saying, like, maybe they trade up for a Musgrave or a Mayer or whatnot because of how much tight end use Sean Payton was going to use, and that whoever is in there, the tight end on the field in 11 personnel, that is going to be a valuable snap-wise position for this team. And it's turned out to be. I mean, everybody's like, oh, why can't Greg Dulcich be that guy? Because he can't freaking block. Yeah. 2 tight end sets, God bless you. He's on the field. I'd be happy with that. Who is that 11 personnel tight end that is your why? Because that's something that it's Troutman right now. I mean, he literally is the only one who fits that mold for the team.
Jason Walton coming in, talking about offensive linemen. Appreciate the super chat. He says, Lloyd Cushenberry's putting together a solid season. Actually saw him get out in front of a screen yesterday. Love that we didn't abandon the run. Jason makes a good point, and I saw a couple of screens that worked, and I saw them in a couple of different ways. Mm-hmm. I saw a standard screen. I saw a roll everybody right, come back to the left screen that had Garibaldi, and I think that was a touchdown, actually.
It was a touchdown.
Pass, the very first one.
Good design.
We isolated Garrett Bowles out there and did his job. And frankly, I love screens because if I've got Javonte Williams and Garrett Bowles against two guys that are under 500 pounds combined, you're in trouble. You're in deep trouble. My offensive lineman's going to win, and I'm going to get 5 yards after contact with Javonte. And I saw a two-man. This is the first time I remember seeing this, Nick. I saw a two-man screen where Lloyd got out early and moved down, and Quinn Meinerz actually came behind him coming into the left side. I'm like, now we're talking. Yeah. Now we're talking. You knew Sean Payton wasn't going to just give up on it. That's got to be getting drilled and drilled and drilled and drilled. Footwork, timing, et cetera, because the screen game is such a huge part of his offense. And you've got the backs to do it. You absolutely have the running backs to make them pay, whether it's a big hammer, a combination of a hammer and speed, or the lightning quick sewing machine feet of Jaleel McLaughlin out there.
Yeah, I'm surprised he only had 4 runs. It felt like more than that watching the game twice. But we'll continue to come back to it. I do want to talk more about the offense. But first, Peter Terranova coming in here, $4.99 over on YouTube. Good to see you, Peter. He says, will we see Rex Ryan finally give the Broncos defense their flowers? I'm sure there'll be a 3-second clip of like how they had a good game. But I bet you we're going to see a lot more about Patrick Mahomes is sick. Also, the weapons that the Chiefs have are unacceptable. They have to go out there and help him because right now Travis Kelce can't do it alone. And that's something, just looking at this Chiefs game too, not to make it totally a theory takeaway from this one, but while offensive line is very important, obviously, you got to go out there and have somebody on the perimeter that can make some things happen after the catch and be a playmaker. And the Chiefs sorely lack that right now. So that's something that, when we're talking big picture draft wise, offensive line, you do want to have it, of course, but you need to have some difference makers out there on the playmaking spot too.
Sky Moore's been a bit of a disappointment for them, hadn't he?
He looks like an okay wide receiver 2 or 3. But other than that, I mean, same with Rashee Rice, I believe, or is another one out there, but they just don't have any explosiveness difference makers at wide receiver. I mean, their number one guy is Watson, who's just been meh.
Who did they draft with? Did they take Karlaftis with one of those picks they got for Tyreek Hill?
They took it was either Karlaftis or Trent McDuffie, who have both been awesome for the Chiefs on defense.
But on the other side of the ball, don't turn this into. They've already got their rings, but be careful turning this into Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay Packers, where we're going to spend all our money on defense, all our resources on defense, and then we'll just let our quarterback do everything else. Yeah. That's a dangerous game to play.
They have spent it on the offensive line as well, but just who's out there making plays, especially if teams are playing top down with crazy conservative coverage and making you throw it quick. Well, you need somebody to do something after the catch if that's going to be your offense. Chop 499 says, honestly, this is the first one I'm proud of. It was great, but I still don't want Russell Wilson back next year, especially with the contract kicking in. Am I wrong? I thought Wilson in this one was just okay. Overall, protected the football. We had the one fumble. I'm not sure. I can't even remember the Broncos turning over the ball, honestly. But
it's right before half. It was on a strip sack.
Yes. You're exactly right. And that ended up being a difference of 3 points. That was like pretty close to the that ended up being
25 seconds left too.
Yep. Yeah, that one. I saw that one. I was like, those are the ones where you look back. It's like, oh man, you got to protect the damn football that close to half. But right. I digress. Chop, I'm with you still right now. I think that odds are still probably higher that Wilson isn't back this season, and he is a cap casualty than is. I saw some good things from him in this game, but overall, I still would say the Broncos won this game almost in spite of Russell Wilson. He was good, especially in the red zone. Can't take that away from him, but the scheming, the design, everything they were doing, it felt like they were cultivating an offensive game plan that you would for a rookie quarterback. It's like, okay, we want to minimize how many times this guy is dropping back and doing full field reads and whatnot because we don't want to put him in a situation where he can hurt us. That was the takeaway I had from this one in the offensive game design.
And Chop, no, you're not wrong for that. There's arguments to be made on both sides. There will be Russell Wilson fans that see things one way and Russell Wilson detractors that see things the other way. And there's an argument to be made on both sides. What is best for the long-term health of this team is probably getting out from that under that contract as quickly as you can. It's going to be a step backwards to do it because of the financial ramifications of ripping off that Band-Aid and getting it done. But otherwise, it's a slower bleed, and it will. You want to get squeezed by the python or bit by the cobra? The cobra is going to be a lot quicker to just get it done. Then it could hurt you for an extra year if Russell Wilson's there. And Russell Wilson played fine. He's not necessarily, his play isn't necessarily hurting your team, but it's not good enough that you can build on for the future with the amount of resources that he's going to command because of that contract. So no, you're not wrong in saying we need to move on for him for the long-term health of this team.
The goal was to have him play well enough that maybe there could be a trade for him, I think, but I can't see him playing well enough from what we've seen so far and down the stretch that it's going to happen. Some of it is the scheme. I mean, I'm tough on Russell Wilson, but I'll have to go back and watch some of these sacks. But some of them, he hits the back of his drop back and I didn't see guys open. Like there's not really an option there, but to eat the football and take the sack, which sometimes that's the best option. I mean, we all saw Peyton Manning with the self sack many times in Denver when the pass options aren't there. So gonna have to go back and watch that. But Russell Wilson will continue to be an interesting conversation for Broncos country, even coming off of a win. Lars Rivera coming in saying this team is built for cold weather games. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they just took it to the Chiefs. Offensive line, again, give them their flowers. Garrett Bowles had a heck of a game. Powers, Lloyd Cushenberry is playing really good football to the point where we're going to have a contract conversation at the end of the year with him. McGlinchey, probably the best game of his career. I'd have to go back and chart where the sacks came from, but when you're running the ball like that, that's why you brought in McGlinchey. And there was plays out there where 69 was getting some serious push. And the one I really wanted to highlight here is Quinn Meinerz. He had some awesome blocks in this one, but he did one of my favorite things that you see from offensive linemen who are dialed into games and really exerting their will. He is cleaning up almost every single pile. You see the Broncos kind of get stalled up on a run or whatever, and it's pushing. It becomes into like a rugby style kind of push, and you see 77 come in and just wallop behind those guys, pushing it and cheering after they get the push forward for that surge. He is dialed in. It's not always the most
guy up.
Yes, and helping the guy
up. Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's not always the most technically refined ability for Meinerz, but that is a mentality thing that this Broncos team has lacked. And when you see number 77 do it, I'm not kidding, Scott, 6 or 7 times in this game where he's flying in. There was one where he fell down, got back up, and then ran another 5-10 yards to come in behind and get that push. That really speaks a lot to the coaching, how much these guys are dialed into each other, and just the want. I mean, that's a mentality thing, and that is infectious, and that's something that I expect to see going forward. So hats off, offensive line, run game, playing like a top 10 unit and one of the best run blocking performances we've seen in Denver for years, honestly.
The mentality, you can't measure someone's heart, right? Well, you can sure tell when they've got one or not. And that's how. You just described all of it. This is a guy who's going to fight that you can count on. And then he's good on top of it. And that part of that goes in the scouting process. When you're watching these guys, watch them off the ball. And exactly, Nick just described it, how to describe, this is what I'm looking for in a football player as far as the mentality and the heart goes. Nick just described it perfectly in Quinn Meinerz.
Yeah, so that's something that, watch it going forward. If you go back and watch the game again, offensive line doesn't always get flowers. It feels like they're most of the time on the wrong end of it because you see them giving up a sack, and those are loud and obvious when they happen. But you don't run the ball like you did this week against the Chiefs and last week without guys finishing blocks, and that's a mentality thing, and the Broncos brought it this week, and that's infectious. I mean, seeing 69 and 77 on the right side, combo blocking guys, peeling off, getting to the second level, continuing to, hit multiple guys. It was beautiful. And all those big runs, it's not just one offensive lineman guy making a hit. It's almost every single one executing because you need perfection across the line to hit those ones. And it was a beautiful sight. D. Porter coming in $9.99 saying, good morning. Felt great to wake up this morning. I'm still in awe. What a win. And what I'm most happy about is not having to meet and greet on Christmas Day like Scott was ready to do. Yeah, that's we got so lucky with the meet and greet. I mean, it would have been amazing to see that Chiefs win, but the logistics of the snow and the freezing cold compared to 75 degrees the week prior, I guess I got to say that I'm very happy for myself because I would have been a lot of blame for the bad weather.
D. Porter, we were getting desperate, and you needed to end the streak. And if that streak was still alive next year, we were putting the meet and greet mojo up against it. I don't think it'll be on Christmas Day.
No.
But I said, I don't care if it's on Christmas Day. We're meet and greeting that day, baby. We're going to end this thing. Broncos took care of it for us. Now we can just plan The meet and greet for when it's convenient.
October again. Quentin Caldwell says, "Good morning, everyone. Glad we won. Really don't like the blocked kick. Russ ran outside on the play when he had good blocking. He needs to stop running so much. We still have the rest of the season. The blocked field goal, Scott. I can't believe we didn't get a straight down the line look at that, because it looked like to me that he was offsides by a head length on that, and the fact that I didn't review that or whatever. I mean, Sean Payton even brought it up in the post conference. Really sly of him to work it in there as a missed call without getting the refs fired up there, because like, oh, sometimes they deal with adversity. The block kick where the guy was offsides, like he just throws it in there like nothing. But other than that,
Offside's reviewable. I don't think it is.
neutral zone infraction is.
I've never seen it reviewed ever.
I've seen neutral zone. I've seen neutral zone infraction reviewed on kicks, like when the guy, like they're looking at it and his head is obviously offsides, and at least I feel like I have.
Okay, I've never had, and it's one of those that would seem to be. It's one of those. It's like there's so much gray area that's like we don't want to review it every time because it doesn't always affect the play and it would get tedious. So we're just going to make this not reviewable. Well, it mattered this time. So yeah. I don't know. And unfortunately, Quentin, thanks for the super chat, my friend. Hope you're doing well. Running is in Russ's DNA. That's who he is. It's not going to stop. That is how he's in his mid-30s, and that has been a part of his game since he could pick up a football. It's not going to stop. Now, can he get it in his mind, I need to run so I can get rid of the ball? Meaning I need to run to save the play, because his DNA for his entire career has been, I want to run to make a play. It needs to be now where, listen, I need to run and get the ball out of bounds, avoid a sack, avoid the intentional grounding just to get outside and get rid of the ball. And that could be a maturation process of, hey, I'm old now. It happens. It happens to all of us. I don't know if it will or not, but his DNA for his entire life as a quarterback is I run to make a play. And that's a tough transition to make.
They need to and I think there's a possibility we could still see it this season, but almost a little bit more controlled of when to unleash it and not, because in between the 20s, I think he needs to be a lot more meticulous in terms of when he can take sacks and whatnot, because the ball is moving. And if you get outside, let's say the Broncos at 3rd and 13, and they have to be obvious drop back, I mean, that's when they're at their worst. Most teams are, but like the Broncos especially, 5-step drops, full field reads, you put in McGlinchey in an obvious pass drop situation. I mean, that's when things get ugly for Denver. I don't mind it as much in the red zone, just because we're seeing historical numbers of red zone defense right now in the NFL. So that looking to make a play, as long as you're protecting the football at the same time, a sack there is not the biggest thing in the world, because you're still in field goal range and whatnot. And we saw it in this game. I mean, I think 2 of the touchdowns, but definitely one of them was Russell Wilson's ability to make plays outside of structure, to extend plays because of the athleticism. He gets a sack there and protects the football. Okay. I mean, you have to look to create somewhat. So hopefully they can be a little bit more precise of when to be aggressive and when to protect the ball like that. But the sacks are still going to come. I mean, that's just part of who Russell Wilson is at this point. Unfortunately, it's not coming with the explosives that it used to. Part of that is because where the game is at right now. But I do think there's controlled aggression that can be in there with how he plays. And we got RD talking about Russ, saying Russ's arm is fine. The Canadian $10. Thank you so much. He says, but why doesn't he get rid of the ball? He's gun shy like a rookie, afraid to make a mistake. You think he'd be coached like this? Even checkdowns, we win yesterday's game by more. I think part of it is Russell Wilson struggles seeing the wide receivers in the pocket sometimes with the taller guys around him. And he's never really had to be a quick go through progression quarterback because of his style. So I think that makes him not as good at going through the full field reads in a timely manner. And he looks to just, drop his eyes and escape versus, hit that check down. So it's stuff that he's going to have to continue to work on. Maybe it's stuff he'll never be great at. But it's kind of who he is as a quarterback. And we're seeing a play creator, a playmaker who's lost their ability to create as much as they used to.
Right. It goes back down to what I said just a moment ago. With his DNA has always been to make plays, not just escape plays and be safe. That's just not in his nature. So he's not necessarily looking down to the intermediate. He's looking long. The checkdowns aren't always there. He's gotten away with through his career of escaping and hitting the back end of the defense, and that's tough to change your nature of who you are. It can, as you start realizing your limitations more as an older quarterback, but I don't know how quickly. I've never really paid attention to how quickly that transition can happen for a mobile quarterback like that. So, and I don't think it will happen with the Denver Broncos. I think you've just got to get in your mind, if you escape, you're getting chased down by guys now. They're faster than you. You've got to just protect the ball first. Look to run. Take a glance over your shoulder if you need to.
Yeah.
And put the ball in the stands.
Yep. And again, I think it's something where that can be a boon as long as you're protecting the football. Sorry,
Right.
That's my Iowa in my head coming out there. But I think it can be a positive in the red zone just because it has been so hard for teams to score this year in the red zone. We're seeing, like I said, historical lows in terms of red zone conversion percentage. And I mean, that's probably the difference of the game here, folks. Broncos 3 for 5 in the red zone in this game. The Chiefs 0 for 3. Well, there's your difference. But when it's, the ball driving between the 20s, you got to stay on schedule. One of those sacks really puts you out. So hopefully they can kind of figure out something there, because you need the playmaking still, but not when it's detrimental when you are on schedule. Bronco Kid coming into the $9.99 super. Thank you so much. You guys have been killing it today. Drop a thumbs up, a like on the way in. If you can't, drop a super chat. We'd really appreciate that. He says, if we move on from Russ, who is replacing him, if it's Caleb Williams or Drake May, that's fine. But if it's a journeyman or some random quarterback from the draft, I'd rather keep Russ. It's a tough situation for the Broncos in terms of the post-Russell Wilson landscape. Who knows what it looks like if that moment comes. I think this win this week probably puts you out of the Caleb Williams, Drake May sweepstakes, because there's just so many teams that only have, 2 to 3 wins. Congrats to the Panthers. First win of the year. Shout out to you guys. But I think it's pretty hard for the Broncos to move on, would be hard for them to get Caleb Williams or Drake May. They don't really have the capital to move up and make a move for one of those guys either. It's possible they keep Russ. The big issue with Russ is that he's aging, and you have a massive $37 million guarantee that kicks in on the 5th day of the league year this year for 2025.
Right. So it's a 2-year commitment. If you keep, it's like if you try and keep him one more year, you got to keep him 2, and that becomes a scary proposition, Nick.
It's a 3-year commitment from the money because of I'm pretty sure, Scott, that because of that, some of the money kicks on to 2026 as well. So that would be a 2024, 2025, 2026 money commitment, because it would be so large on that 2025 hit that they'd have to split it between 2025 and 2026. So I'm like 90% sure that if you keep him this year, from a paying him perspective, it's a 3-year commitment.
Then that kind of answers the question on what's going to happen. You can't go with Russell Wilson as your quarterback for 3.5 more years. You just can't.
Yeah. So going to be interesting to follow. Yeah, who knows? I mean, it's possible that he plays so well down the stretch and something clicks with the offense and the Broncos win enough games that it's like, okay, we are going to see what this happens. Maybe you get further on that contract, Scott. I mean, if he keeps playing well, it does become more tradable because you can eat a lot of it still in a trade. But I am pretty sure that
some of it, not a lot of it.
Some of it, yeah. I mean, you're going to be eating a lot of it regardless, right? So maybe you can get a pick out of it in the end. But yeah, it's a really
Spotrac calls it the potential out after 2025 as a $31 million dead cap hit, which is still a ton.
Yeah.
And that means you'd have your quarterback for 2024 and 2025, and then still have a $31 million dead cap hit in 2026.
So yeah, so you're really on the hooks for 3 years, unless you move on from him this offseason, when it could just be 2 years.
Bad deal, man.
Yeah. But in the end, the Broncos win. We're happy to see a victory on this one. Ryan Main, $4.99, saying best MHH duo. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. We appreciate that. He says, thanks for starting my morning off. Happy I got to listen. What do some different paths look like with Tim Patrick's future? Path number 1, he's outright released, and we'll see him get a chance at another team's camp this upcoming year. Option number 2, he takes a he's released but signs back with the Broncos and close to a veteran league minimum. Option number 3, he's released, and because of the injuries and whatnot, he falls into the unknown, has been kind of names of many players in the past, which when injuries and age come for you, happens. So I think those are the most likely things with Tim Patrick. I'm pulling for him. He's still young. He's going to get a chance, but who knows what he looks like after 2 serious injuries and missing football for 2 seasons.
His dead cap hit next year is $6 million. It would make sense to sign him to a $6 million deal next year. And you would say, I'm cutting you. You've already gotten that $6 million through your signing bonus. Would you like another 6 of non-guaranteed? And it would be cap neutral then. And then maybe he can come back and play. Non-guaranteed money at 6, it would still count the same as if you were to release him. There's 0% chance he plays on that contract next year. 0. He's got a $16 million cap hit next year against a $6 million dead cap hit. So you would approach him with hey, would you like to be cut? Or would you like to sign this deal for whatever, X amount guaranteed? And I may be messing up my math on this. The one part I'm positive of, though, he doesn't play on the current contract he's on.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Patrick. Hopefully he can get healthy. Would love to see nothing more than to have him.
I'm pretty sure I'm wrong on that, Nick. If you redid his contract, he agreed to a restructure of a 1-year, $6 million deal. I think he'd have a $12 million cap hit.
Okay.
Because it would be a 6 dead
and then 6
from the previous contract, and then whatever you pay him on top of that. So
yeah.
So we'll see. He's not going to get $6 million in salary next year unless it's non-guaranteed.
And some good comments here from Chris talking about Russell Wilson. Why? Moving on from Wilson says, so if he has 35 touchdowns and 8 picks, we don't want him. It's an unbelievably tough discussion there, Chris. I don't disagree with you. If the stats are good this year, I mean, right now he is approaching a really good statistical season, but my eyes tell me that he's only playing okay right now for the Broncos. I mean, you can see the play design from this last game, which was very much we are trying to limit the quarterback as much as possible in terms of the influence of the game. So they still use him. And if he was on a, relatively inexpensive contract, like middle of the pack, even though there are no middle of the pack quarterback contracts, Scott, then that'd be one thing. But the fact that he's going to get paid so much and the commitment to a depreciating asset, it's an unbelievably tough conversation to have, because on the surface, the numbers look fine. The tape is what it is, but 35, 36, 37 years old, the massive contract that he has. I mean, it just seems like a no-win situation for Denver, even though the stats could look okay.
Yeah, the stats are going to look good, which makes you hope that someone says, hey, he's the answer we need, right? Atlanta Falcons, he could come in here, because right now, quarterback rating, he's got the 4th best quarterback rating in the NFL. Are you winning games because of Russell Wilson? No, probably not. You won that game yesterday because of the defense. I mean, it was a total team. Don't get me wrong. He executed, but you're not winning games because of your quarterback. And he's about to take up about 30% of your salary resources.
Mm-hmm.
That's a formula. Are you worth what you're getting paid? The answer for Russell Wilson moving forward is about to be no.
And we have a lot of games left to see how that sidejar. I know we have a lot of games left to see how it plays out for Russell Wilson as well. Things might turn around and he plays much better football. And the Broncos don't win this game this week without Russell Wilson too. I firmly believe that. You put in, let's say, Brett Rippon back there or somebody, they're not executing in the red zone. You go for 3 for 5 because of a lot what Russell Wilson did in that game. So it's going to be a very tough situation for the Broncos to follow. And the only guy that it matters the opinion of is Sean Payton. Sean Payton
beat Buffalo, and we'll start having different conversations. Otherwise, You're talking about a 3-6 team. I mean, all of the good on the whole, when I'm looking as a general manager for the future of this team for the next 3 years, right now I'm 3-5.
Yep.
And I'm about to have to pay my quarterback an ungodly amount of money who's aging. And like you said, a depreciating asset. Yeah, That's where it becomes tough. I mean, he's got to be playing not just as a quarterback rating top 5 guy. but a belief. And everybody on the world watches this game and says that's the top 5 quarterback in the NFL for the amount of money that he's about to get.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of attribute it to like watching, a young kid bowl with the bumpers on the side, or a bike rider with the training wheels. I mean, that was the offense this week with Russell Wilson, and when they've been at their best, hats off to Pete Carroll and the Seahawks. They were right. Everything devolves into this Russell Wilson style of football where it's running through the offensive line, the run game, and ability off of play action on top of that, which is fine to an extent. The issue is that because of Russell Wilson's age and also just defensive evolution in general that we've seen over the last 3 to 4 years, where teams are playing way more cover 4 and we have way less explosive plays, that devalues a lot of the things that made Russell Wilson a special quarterback. Those explosive plays, they're just not coming like they used to. So didn't want to make it a full Russell Wilson conversation because this is going to be one of the harder things that we've had to discuss, Scott. It's coming down the tracks because the stats are good and the Broncos look like they could be winning some football games, and it's going to hurt to move on from him. But can you execute what they're wanting?
If you can, you're going to have to move on. And if
tough.
you can get some money back and a pick, then that's your best option.
It's going to be a tough one, Scott, no doubt.
But we can't trade him because of the contract. No one wants a contract. They wouldn't have to have the contract.
Yeah.
Denver's eating the big money on the contract. I could pay the $17 million or whatever his number is. That would be for this year. What was his base salary next year?
It's like 40 or something.
Is 37.
Yeah.
So, God, again, that guarantee just throws everything else up. It's complicated. It is complicated. But if you were to trade him right now, today, before the trade deadline, his base salary is only $17 million. Then I can cut him next year as the team that is taking him, and then re-sign him. And you're still having to pay all that, but at least you got some of that money back from what I ended up paying him this year, which is the remainder of his $17 million base.
Yeah. And James says, Nick, why are you not coaching if you know what's best? Because it's much more fun to hang out with you guys here. I don't know if I know what's best exactly, but you can look at the data.
Because I wasn't focused enough to sleep on couches as a coaching intern and learning to walk on. It's just what I could have done at a D3 school to have that on my resume, and then sleep in coaches' offices and make no money until I'm 30 years old. And then live on the run where I'm changing places every 1 year. I'm having to move from this town to this town to this town. I had a family, and I was making more money than most of the assistant coaches. And this ended up being a pretty good job for us. And Nick actually does real work, not just sports media, where he does work in the scientific community, which is something he loves doing.
Yeah.
Coaching's a tough road to hoe, man. It's, God bless them. We talk about, these guys should get paid for their work. Anybody that is doing a job that is envious of someone else, they've paid their frickin' dues. I promise you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Also, I didn't really want to coach. I'm much more of the team building aspect side of things. General manager would have been a lot more fun, but not as fun as hanging out with you guys after a win and breaking the streak and hanging out with Scott in a very interesting week of football. Any final thoughts, Scott, before we wrapping it up? Broncos get a big win. Again, just some of these stats to go over. Broncos hold the Chiefs 3 for 10 on third down. The Broncos hold the Chiefs to just 213 passing yards, 5 turnovers on the day, winning the turnover battle +4. And the Broncos rushing game, only 3.8 yards per attempt, but 40 rushing attempts, 153 yards. Broncos just dominated this game. So it is a lot of fun.
Yeah, and the Patrick Mahomes was sick thing doesn't fly. It's that excuse is nonsense, because they didn't lose this game because Patrick Mahomes wasn't making plays. There were more players that weren't making plays around. Did the rest of his team get sick? Because those were the ones that weren't making plays. Patrick Mahomes was still playing like Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
So we've seen him, as someone else said, if you can win in one of the supers, if he can win on one leg, you should be able to compete. Well, he did. He did play well.
Yep.
That loss wasn't on Patrick Mahomes. That loss was on the Denver Broncos. That was a Denver Broncos win. Congratulations. Enjoy it.
Yeah, and shout out again to Vance Joseph, the offensive line, defense, holding Travis Kelce to, what do we have on the day? 6 receptions on 9 targets for just 58 yards. Corralling him very good. Sounded like Beth Mowens there for a second. Yards, 95 yards. But
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it, man. I listened to the Falcons game and I went to go watch it and I was like, oh my God, Beth Mowens is doing the game. I cannot listen to her.
She's got that Maryland yards going on.
No, it's not a Maryland. For some reason, a lot of announcers have thought that doing a bad Harry Carey impersonation is the way to talk like an announcer. And in the business, they call those people pukers. That's the term for them. When you hear someone trying to do this is my announcer voice, and they sound like they're doing a bad Harry Carey impersonation, those are pukers. She is one of the worst, and it is absolutely nauseating. I cannot listen to it.
I kind of like Beth Mowens because of how many Big Ten West games I've had with her at the
can't do it, man.
Early time slot. But I always love the yards. But appreciate everyone. A good win.
Phony. It's so phony. I can't take it.
Sometimes I say a word wrong and it's just by accident. It just like came out wrong and we just keep going. But it's not a bit.
The one that gets me is down in the South. The Atlanta United announcer has this thick redneck Chicago, Minnesota accent. A back pass from Guzan.
Oh, Wisconsin.
I'm like, what the? This is Atlanta, man. Guzan takes the back pass.
That's very Minnesota.
Oh.
God, I love that. Yeah, I don't know, Scott, final thoughts on the game before we get on out of here, just before we devolve.
No, just 24 hours, 30 hours on the trade deadline. We'll see what happens. I don't expect much to happen, honestly, just because the guys that you would have as trade assets are under contract for the next year. So you don't have any pending free agents that you want to unload, that you need to unload, like Von Miller, Bradley Chubb. Your best asset there is probably Josie Jewell, middle linebacker. Injury history, you wouldn't get much for him. This was a fun win. The team's headed in the right direction. We're going to change the conversation if you go out to Buffalo and win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And in the word of Colin Wood here, we need more yards for the Broncos to beat the Bills next week. Appreciate everybody coming in here. Sorry we didn't get to say hi every single person in the chat. A lot of times after the wins, especially like this, we have a bunch of people come in and we want to get to everyone. I saw Pearl Heater in here. Good to see you. James Hyatt, of course. I saw our guy Patrick in here too. Wanted to give a shout out to you. Bama X, we appreciate you. Achy Dragon. I mean, you guys are killing it today. So many super chats and superstars as well. You guys are great. We appreciate everybody. I don't have all the list of all these stars coming in here, but thank you guys so much. Gary Palmer, Michael Ronquillo, of course. Awesome week. We appreciate you so much. Karako says, Nick, you sound sad that we beat the Chiefs. Not sad. Excited. Really happy. I've been up since 5 a.m., so maybe it has to do with that.
It's the hopes were raised now.
Yeah.
There's still so much work for this team to be done. There's going to be peaks and valleys. But again, the arrow's headed in the right direction. There's going to be some down ticks again, but the arrow's headed in the right direction finally. Yeah. Broncos country.
Never too high, never too low. We'll see what happens with the rest of the games. Broncos are now 3-5 and get the monkey off the back. It's pretty awesome to see them beat the Chiefs 24-9 in a butt whipping, physical domination by the Broncos. Make sure you guys are following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendell MHH. Also follow us at BFB_pod as well as at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, join us at Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as the ticker says here underneath, make sure you subscribe to Mile High Huddle over on YouTube, like the show, and share it on your social media platforms. Broncos get the victory 24-9 over the Kansas City, 2-game win streak, and enter the bye week. Trade deadline around the corner. A lot of interesting things going to happen here. Appreciate everybody. Make sure you have a great rest of your day. Have a great week, great Monday. Continue to choose kindness and compassion. And as always, go Broncos.